So Donald Trump shatters the status quo again as back channels appear to have been opened between the Trump team and the North Koreans, going around the Biden administration completely after Kim Jong-un says publicly he won't meet President Biden. Off the table. And Joe Rogan's attacked again, viciously attacked and smeared. The viewers of his podcast are smeared by legacy mainstream media outlet ABC News after their chairman took the podium at the National Press Club a few days ago and let out this battle cry against the king of podcasting and really against free speech in the process, and the latest evidence of how much power the left still has, raw political power. We're going to show you. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So after being lied to for so long by establishment media, waking up to the pure, unadulterated lies has been the best thing for this country. Alternate voices and sources of information led to the massive victory we saw 3 weeks ago. Could you imagine what happened without X? The media said Trump and Kamala were neck and neck in the polls, lying to us that this would be the closest election in our lifetimes. They lied to us during the pandemic. They lied to us that Joe Biden was youthful and mentally cognizant enough to run for a second term. Imagine that. What else did they lie to us about? That Donald J. Trump would start World War III.
President Trump's unpredictable behavior led advisors to hesitate to give him military options.
President Trump is no longer considered to be a rational actor in this dialogue. I don't want us to take our eye off North Korea. The current language out of the administration, the lack of a diplomatic and serious engagement strategy, in my view, has us sliding toward war by next summer.
People are very worried about this crisis. It is, as one said, the closest we've come to a nuclear war since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Well, he didn't start World War III, and not only that, he didn't start any new wars. He opened a dialogue and tried to put to bed these decades-long conflicts, like with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, aka Little Rocket Man. Remember this? Donald Trump meeting Kim Jong-un at the demarcation line between North and South Korea. While the U.S., by the way, is at war with North Korea, technically, if you didn't know, there's an active war between the Koreas. It's never been settled. In 1953, they came to an armistice, not a peace treaty. They built this demarcation line that you're looking at, separating North and South Korea along the DMZ, this demilitarized zone. And in June 2019, Trump made history, being the first U.S. president to enter North Korea and shake hands with Kim Jong-un himself. And after that, we didn't hear much more about Little Rocket Man, did we? Everything calmed down. 4 years later, what happens? Little Rocket Man's back, causing trouble, teaming up with Russia, sending tens of thousands of troops, waging war against the people of Ukraine. Well, ladies and gentlemen, something amazing has happened. After Donald Trump's victory a few weeks ago, peace is breaking out. Look at this. Israel, Hezbollah just announced an immediate ceasefire. The fighting has already stopped. Of course, Biden jumped out in front of the cameras to take credit yesterday, which you would expect him to do. But ask yourself, do you really think this would have happened if Trump wasn't coming into office? The entire world is gearing up for this new period of peace and deals post-Trump's inauguration. The country feels like it's being powered back up. It's a great feeling, and it's not stopping with the Middle East and Ukraine and Russia. Breaking last night, back channels have been opened between the Trump team and North Korea. Trump planning on meeting with Little Rocket Man again, hopefully to end this war for good, and possibly in an effort to end the war in Ukraine, meaning that meeting with Kim Jong-un may have something to do with Russia as well. We'll see. Look at this. President-elect Donald Trump's team's discussing pursuing direct talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, hoping for a fresh diplomatic push that can lower the risks of armed conflict. What reciprocation Kim will offer, Trump's unclear. The North Koreans ignored 4 years of outreach by U.S. President Joe Biden to start talks with no preconditions. Look, Trump's inheriting a major mess from Joe Biden and is getting down to work cleaning it up. They broke it. Trump will fix it. It's the best slogan of the campaign, hands down. In another story, the chairman of ABC News, Kim Williams, attacks Joe Rogan at the National Press Club last weekend, saying he personally finds it deeply repulsive that someone like Mr. Rogan has so much power in the United States. Actually, here's what he said verbatim. I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They entrepreneur fantasy outcomes, conspiracy outcomes. I personally find it deeply repulsive to think someone like him has so much power in the United States. So if you're wondering why a show like The View, which is owned by ABC News, is still on the air, it's because this guy and people like him are at the top of these organizations. Attacking Joe at the National Press Club of all places, at the podium of the National Press Club. You can't make this up. Roll the tape.
Hello, Kim. Thank you for your address
Jane.
today and welcome back to the club. I have a question about Joe Rogan, and you've sort of touched on elements of this in the US. He's obviously the world's most popular podcast host. He has 3 billion listeners. He's sort of managed to successfully capture that bro market in America. And his influence is such that in the wake of the US election, the Democrats have said that one of Kamala Harris's mistakes was that she didn't appear on his program. So I'm just wondering if you had any observations about what's behind the Joe Rogan effect, how you believe he's managed to so successfully capture this huge market. And then for us here in Australia, you know, how would or should the ABC be going about capturing that kind of audience?
Look, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to respond to that question. I am not a consumer or enthusiast about Mr. Rogan and his work.
Shocking.
I am not one of the 3 billion, and I'm unlikely to be 3 billion and one anytime soon. I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all of the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society, and they entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive, and to think that someone has such remarkable power in the United States is something that I look at in disbelief. I'm also absolutely in dismay that this can be a source of public entertainment when it's really treating the public as plunder for purposes that are really quite malevolent.
Look, Joe Rogan's show is so popular because he does what the mainstream media can't. He sits down for these long-form, honest discussions, and the fact that the chairman of ABC finds Rogan repulsive but enjoys The View on his own airwaves, I think says it all. Donald Trump has just nominated Stanford professor Jay Bhattacharya for NIH director, an amazing pick. If you don't remember who Jay is, he was one of the original authors of the Great Barrington Declaration published in October 2020. He argued that these shelter-in-place measures and quarantines were likely not worth the cost that they'd impose on the economy, on the community, on people's physical and mental health. He was a big believer in herd immunity and so much more. He was one of the original lone voices when all the chaos that was breaking out around us was happening around COVID. This guy had the bravery and the fortitude to speak out and disagree. Watch.
That was a lie. There was never a scientific consensus on almost any of the topics. And as you say, en masse, in fact, the pre-existing narrative, the pre-existing idea among most scientists before the pandemic was quite the opposite direction. What happened was a relatively small group, a cartel almost, of very powerful scientific bureaucrats took over the whole apparatus of science, at least as far as the public eye was concerned, dominated the media, dominated the message to politicians, and as a result, we had a catastrophic response to COVID, and we're going to be paying the cost of that for a very long time.
And look, it's hard to even express how great it feels that RFK Jr. will be HHS secretary and Jay Bhattacharya as NIH director. It's as if there's really some balance left in the world, or at least coming back into the world. In another story, America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani makes a plea to the American people outside the courthouse to wake up to what they're doing to him. If they could do it to him, they can do it to you. This is the latest example of the sheer power the left still has. Raw political power. That's what this is. Democrats have taken everything from this man, targeting him just like they did to Alex Jones because of his words over free speech, filing this $148 million defamation suit against him. This is a message from the left. If you represent Donald Trump, if you support Donald Trump, we will destroy you forever. This is wrong, disgusting, and in my opinion, it's one of the worst attacks on the First Amendment we've ever seen. Maybe even worse than what they're doing to Alex Jones, because Rudy is a lawyer. They're doing this to him because of what he said while defending his client. It's crazy. Roll the tape.
Reality is, I have no cash. It's all tied up. So right now, if I wanted to call a taxi cab, I can't do it. I don't have a credit card. I don't have a checking account. I have no place I can go take cash out except a little bit that I saved, and it's getting down to almost nothing. I have a business. I can do business expenses, but I'm very careful about that because God forbid I should make a mistake between a personal and a business expense. Unlike Hunter Biden, I go to jail right away.
All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.